Leonie Dawson refuses to be categorized, and today I'm going to share with you how to record a podcast, step-by-step instructions, in case you've been thinking about starting a podcast and you're not sure how to begin. So first and foremost, I did have a rant about this on social media. Early on in quarantine, there was kind of this joke that the ABC did, and it's the Australian Broadcasting station here in Australia, and they got a lot of Australian celebrities to do this public service announcement saying, sure, do anything you like in lockdown, but do not start a podcast. The world does not need more podcasts. And I legitimately got shitty because a lot of the people in there actually had their own podcasts. And I was like, what? So only celebrities are supposed to have podcasts? Fuck right off. And here's the thing. I want you to start your podcast. I want you to start your podcast. I think this world absolutely needs your podcast. And here's why. We all have our stories to share, and we all have our voice that needs to be heard, and we've all got our own unique take on the world. And I know for me, I don't feel like there's enough podcasts in the world. I'm constantly scrambling to try and find new podcasts to listen to, and I don't listen to podcasts that much. But here's the thing, it's so easy for me to chew up all of the podcasts I do listen to because it's just glorious and joyful. And here's the thing with podcasts as well is there's a few podcasts that I listen to, and I notice that my relationship with the people who do the podcast changes from doing the podcast. So for example, I listen to Chat 10 Looks 3 podcast, and it is by the Australian journalist Lee Sales, who does the 7:30 report, and Annabelle Crabb, who does such glorious shows as I think it was Kitchen Cabinet and Back in Time for Dinner and some other gorgeous kooky shows. Oh, The House as well, which went into Parliament House, that kind of glorious stuff. Anyway, I didn't really know them from a bar of soap before, but just getting them to hear their podcast and what books they're reading and TV shows and their hilarious jokes and their beautiful friendship totally makes me feel connected. And so now whenever Lee Sales or Annabelle Crabb comes on the TV, my husband or kids are like, Mom, your podcast friends are here. And I will totally watch their shows now. Well, no, I won't watch the 7:30 report. Sorry, Lee Sales, but it's not up my alley. But I have an absolute fondness for them. And if they were to ever do a live show here, I would 100% go if I could get tickets, because they are now colossally sold out when they do tours. Of course, this is pre-pandemic days. And then there's another podcast that I listen to. No, a few podcasts of people that I've followed the blogs of for years. And so I already had a kind of a familiarity with them. But I noticed that by listening to their podcasts, it deepened my relationship with them. And I fell in love so much harder, 10 times harder, by listening to them. So podcasts can be a very effective way of building up awareness around you and building really beautiful connections between you and your community and really helping reinforce that know, trust factor. So I think everyone should record a fucking podcast. So let's talk about the step-by-step instructions. I'm going to go into the details of the actual how-tos, and then we'll talk more about the content, the publishing structure, all that kind of stuff. So first and foremost, there are a bunch of podcasting services out there. I personally use Anchor.fm. It is free. Yay! I was using Buzzsprout before, and they were great too, but they weren't free. And I do find the interface with Anchor.fm kind of simpler to use. And what's really fun about Anchor as well is that they just have an app for your phone, they've got an app for your iPad, or you can use their just their webpage to record stuff directly into. It's so fucking simple, and you can edit in there, you can add intros and outros, and you can even get them to automatically insert ads and you start earning ad revenue from it, which is really cool as well. I don't add ads in mine because I genuinely don't give a fuck. And I also just don't have my shit together on that level whatsoever. So I'm actually recording right now onto my iPad, onto the Anchor FM app, and it's super easy. Now, the next thing to think about is the name. What name are you going to do for your podcast? Now, here's the thing. I clearly am not a naming expert. My podcast is called Leonie Dawson Refuses to be Categorized, purely because I could not think of a fucking name, because I didn't want to be categorized. I didn't want to just say this is what my podcast is about, because I'm not somebody who likes to talk about the same thing over and over again. I will absolutely lose interest and start talking about something else I'm completely interested in. And those passions and obsessions are going to change and they're going to rotate. So mine is kind of a hilarious joke title, but I fucking love it anyway. In terms of the name, what I'd really encourage you is don't get your head stuck up your own asshole in indecision. Just call it The Leonie Dawson Show, The Your Name Show. And then you can fuck around with the tagline and what it's about afterwards, right? Easy peasy, done. The next thing you want to think about is what image do you want to use for your podcast? And so it's just a square graphic that you create, and that's an essential part of having a podcast out there. Again, don't get your head stuck up your own ass about this. If it's going to be your show, then it should just have a photo of you and then the name of the podcast on there. For me, I went to Fiverr, that's Fiverr, and I searched for podcast graphic artist and found somebody on there who created mine for me. I sent them the photo and I sent them my hand-drawn shit and they came up with it for me. If you like futzing around with graphic design shit, just do it yourself. That's awesome. But the most important thing is just get it done and don't think about it. Like, you have literally 24 hours to get your podcast done and go fucking get it done. I don't want you to think about this for the next 6 months with indecision. That's boring as shit, and I just want you to do the fucking thing already. All right. Next thing to think about is recording equipment. Now, here's the thing. I am absolutely a basic bitch when it comes to recording equipment. The reason being is that if I make it too complicated, I won't use it. It's too hard. So I've actually bought stuff in the past. Like, I've got a Zoom H4n recorder, which is like top of the line voice recorder. I've got it, and it just stops me from using it because it's kind of annoying to set up, and then it records onto an SD card, and then I have to take the SD card out and transfer it over onto my laptop, and then I have to edit it all together. Like, fuck that. I could not be bothered. So this is how I personally record. You might be like way better at the detail shit than me and way more interested. It's just not me, and I'd prefer to actually just get it done and out there and published than for it to be perfect. Here's how I do it. Okay, so I have a gaming headset which has a built-in microphone with it. It's a HyperX, Hyperx gaming headset. I don't know what style it is. I think my husband bought them on special somewhere, and you could get 2 for 1, so he bought me one. And I was like, actually, that works for me. I can just chuck a fucking headphones on, and it's got a microphone attached, and I'll record that way. And this is currently plugged into my iPad. My headset is into my iPad, and it's recording straight onto the Anchor FM from there. Alternatively, though, and you guys will have fucking heard this, when I do Entrepreneur in a Car Talking Shit episodes, that is me talking into my phone, and my phone is shoved down my overalls pocket in front of me, and I'm just talking. And there's no headset, there's fucking nothing, because I'm just talking shit as I drive. You're welcome. So I keep it simple so that there is no fucking barrier to me to actually just press publish. I know Russell Brunson has a marketing podcast, and he basically does exactly the same thing. He doesn't want to make it hyper polished because it'll stop him from doing it. And so instead, he's got like maybe a 20-minute drive from his house to his offices. And so he just talks shit into his phone while he drives. That's his fucking podcast, and it's great. So that's my fucking podcast, and it's great. Now, if you want to be fucking fancy, sure, go get yourself a podcast mic. There's ones out there specifically for podcasts, and they look really cute. They're like these kind of, I don't know, like what shape? It's like kind of cylindrical, but with a dome on top, kind of like an ice cream dome on top. Looks super cute. I think they're called the Blue Yeti. Maybe? Sure. Why not? Lots of people use those. That's great. Again, it'd fucking stop me from making a podcast, which goes against the whole fucking point of me having a podcast. So I just do it this way. And if you want to be real fucking fancy, good for you. You should record in a quiet, insulated space. What I mean by insulated, you don't want to be in a room that is got a lot of bounce in it, like an empty room. What you want to do is have a lot of insulation around you. So I know some bloggers like Young House Love, when they do their podcast, they set up big pillows around their microphone, not touching the microphone, but around, like kind of like a pillow cube, and then they talk into it to record their podcast together because it insulates against the excess sound. I also have some friends who were the ABC correspondents in Africa for the radio. And yes, I know, I'm fucking posh, guys. No, I'm not. I'm really not. But I remember them saying to me that the best place for them to record wasn't actually in the studio. Instead, it was better for them to record in their walk-in robe at home, surrounded by all their clothes, because it would provide that nice kind of cushioning effect around the sound. Again, do this if you fucking love it, and it's not going to stop you from actually just making the fucking thing. Otherwise, if it is going to stop you, just put your fucking phone in your overalls pocket and talk shit into it. Talk into the app, and then Bob's your uncle, you're fucking done. I should say as well, a lot of people do have like podcast intros and outros with special effects sounds and stuff, and like, good for them. That's amazing. So amazing. You've listened to this podcast. You know I just sing a stupid song at the start, and it changes every time, and it's great, and I fucking love it. The reason being, again, if I had to edit this fucking thing, it's not going to get done. So I'm not going to do it. That said, Anchor does have like a pretty easy way for you to just edit that shit in. So if that strikes your fancy, fucking do it. And also, if you're wondering where to get those podcast intros and outros done, one, you can make them yourself if that's your jam. Or again, you can find somebody on Fiverr, Fiverr, and search podcast intro, and you will find cool shit on there. I've definitely hired someone in the past to do one of those for me. I think it was for one of my courses or something, because I was feeling particularly fancy that day. Anyway, that's how you do that. Woo! So once you've recorded it, if you feel like editing, sure, fucking edit it. I don't give a fuck, but I don't edit, and I'm not going to, because that's going to stop me from publishing. Yay! Next step. So you publish it, and then in Anchor as well, you want to make sure that you set it up for it to be sent to, like, automatically sent to all of the different podcast app places, like, you know, Apple Podcasts and Spotify and iHeartRadio and Stitcher and all the fucking things. Now, when you sign up with any of these places like Anchor.fm or whatever, they'll give you step-by-step instructions exactly how to do it. Sometimes it's a mostly automated process. Sometimes there's a few manual steps in there. Totally cool, totally fine. Just know that when you do launch a podcast, it's going to take a few days for it to appear in all the big stores, like, Apple Podcasts and stuff like that. It won't when it's actually set up. It'll just be basically automatic. But the first time, once you're getting it up and going, then sure, you need to wait a couple of days before it will actually be live on everything. Okay, so you've recorded it, you've published it, you've done the fucking thing, amazing, you've sent it out to all the things. So now I'm going to talk a little bit more about kind of the marketing of it, that kind of stuff. So one thing that you might want to do for every podcast episode is to have show notes. And what show notes are is where you do, like, you include links and names of everything that you've talked about in the episode. You could do a full transcript of your words into text for people who prefer to read it or who are vision impaired. There's a couple of places that you can go to for transcription. You could go to rev.com or otter.io. And sometimes podcast services do offer that transcription option as well. So include in the show notes all of that goodness. And that might be, you might want to just have it in the description of the podcast, but most people do an actual blog post about it. And then that blog post is kind of permanently there, and they can point people directly to the blog post about it. And the blog post will include like the embedded player, so they can listen to it right there in the blog post, and links to all of the places they can find it online as well from all the different places. I also have a permanent page set up on my website called leoniedawson.com/podcast. And whenever I talk about my podcast, I just send people to that URL. Now, the reason for that is it's kind of like the home page. It's the centrifugal force for the podcast. It explains about the podcast and what you're going to hear on it. It has an embedded player, again, where you can listen to all of the podcast episodes. It gives you the links of all the places that you can subscribe to the podcast. And mine also has a compilation of episodes. And the way I do that is every blog post I tag in a category as Leonie's podcast. And then that page will, in a certain section, show up all of the posts that were tagged with that category. So that can be a good way of having that home place for your podcast. If this is going to fuck you up though and stop you from doing your podcast, don't do it. I didn't do this shit until, I don't know, I was a month or so in at least, and figured like, oh no, I kind of like this, I'll probably keep going. So you can just do a fucking experiment and just do the minimum viable product. Do the least fucking thing you can do in order to just get your podcast launched and work out whether you enjoy doing it or not. And this is the thing, like even with your image and like your intro, outro, you can add that shit in later. You can update that shit later. I think when I released my first podcast episode, it didn't even have a designed graphic for it. I just put a fucking photo of my face on there. Cute. I'm just going to do the least amount of work possible to work out if I'm going to enjoy this and if there's any point in me continuing and investing more time in it. And Bob's your uncle. Here I am. You can always improve, add to, revise, update the name of later. It's fine. Just get started. Press publish. Okay, what else we do? We use a service called repurpose.io. Again, you don't have to put it in now. You don't ever have to use it. It is a paid service, but what it does is it kind of makes all of my podcasts do double time. So whenever I publish an episode, it automatically converts it into a video with kind of like these sound waves on it. And it publishes it to my YouTube page so that it doubles as a YouTube page as well, like as a YouTube video as well. And I think it does the same thing as a Facebook video. And we have to do this part manually, but my assistant will listen through and grab audio snippets out of each new podcast episode and then release it on Instagram stories, just as a way to for people to get a flavor for what the podcast is like, and if they want to continue listening. We also, for every single episode, we have a tiny little checklist of things to do on it. So some of those things are, make sure we've got the blog post about it with the show notes. Make sure we share it on social media. I personally do up a little separate graphic super quickly about the podcast episode so that I can share it on social media. Again, you don't fucking have to. And what most people do is just use the same graphic over and over. Or if they're especially fancy, they use the same graphic over and over, but they've got a different space for the name. Because I'm addicted to making shit on my iPad, I do a separate image for every single post. But that's just me. I don't think other people do that whatsoever. And then as well, I just have all of the places that I want to share it to across social media, all that kind of stuff. So now let's talk about the content for it. So there's a bunch of different kinds of content you can do. You can stick to one type, or you can experiment. You could do a combo, whatever. I don't fucking care. It's cool. You could have an interview format for it. So you are interviewing other people and you're finding people that you think your audience will be great for. It's good if you do interviews because you will actually naturally have more people find your podcast, because the speakers that you have on there will usually reshare it on social media, and so it attracts more listeners that way. Of course, there's extra complexities when it comes to interviews because you've got to do all that time of finding the people, setting up the interview times, recording it, and making sure you get all their bio and everything right. But it's a very popular format, and that's how a lot of podcasts tend to run. I don't own mine because I don't like scheduled calls. And I prefer just talking shit. And I think the thing that I've most learned about myself is that I love playing with me. I just love playing on my own, creating shit, and just having this one-to-one connection with you. It'd be kind of weird, always interviewing someone else instead of talking to you. It's kind of like talking to somebody else instead of talking to you directly. I don't know. I did, however, interview my friend Josh Weed, just because I love him and I just think he's got a beautiful story. It was ages ago, and it's a beautiful episode. It goes for a fuck ton of time. I think it goes over 2 hours, but it was worth it. And Josh has got a beautiful story. He is a gay Mormon who was married to a woman, and I used to read his blog for years and years and years, and just felt like him and his ex-wife Lolly were so full of love and compassion for each other, and even as their journey and their relationship together changed. So you can go check out my one attempt at an interview, guys. I might do it again at another point in time. There's still a few people that I would like to share with you, but it's definitely not how I want to do it for goodsies. But it might be for you. Super cool. The thing as well, if you're interviewing someone, it also means that you don't have to come up with all the content. You just have to ask good questions. Yay! Okay, in terms of other content, you might be somebody who just wants to talk shit and just be completely random and see what comes out that day. Totally cool. That's me sometimes. See entrepreneur and car talking shit episodes. You might want to pre-write all of your notes like a script and then record them. Some people do that. And I've done for certain episodes, I've actually been reading from a book that I've read, from a book that I've written and then read. Oh, look at me, so posh. Or you could just have a basic structure of notes that then you fill in around. For me, I tend to do mostly just notes or talking complete shit. I will, in the show notes, you know what? They are now. I'll take a photo of my notes for this episode so you can have a squizzy and go, oh, that's how Leonie does it. That's awesome. So sexy. And I'll say, thank you so much. And we will carry on. Look, the most important thing is play around, see what works for you, and most of all, fucking press publish. Stop thinking about your fucking podcast and just do it already. Next up, your publishing schedule. Decide how often that you are going to do a podcast episode. And this totally varies for a lot of people. For me personally, I was starting out with I thought, maybe once a month would be cute. And then I started doing it and I was like, oh no, I kind of fucking love that. And so usually I've got a new episode coming out every week. That doesn't mean, however, that I record a new episode every week. I batch created content for, I think, 8 weeks in advance. Just because I got on a real roll. I do, however, then get inspired to talk about certain shit, and they'll create an extra episode. So there has been times that I've created maybe 2 or 3 podcast episodes that week because I've already got one batch created, but I've got to come up with, I've had this whole other idea and I want to talk about it now and I want to share it with you now. And that's how that goes. So batch creating content's really cool as well. Now, in terms of your publishing schedule, the thing is, I just want you to get in the structure and the flow of doing it and don't put it off. So whatever that means to you, fucking do that. Experiment, play around, see what works for you. Now, the last not the least even. See, if I was a professional podcast episode, I'd edit that out, but I'm not going to because I don't give a fuck. And it would stop me from pressing publish. So there we are. Okay, so I want you to have a think about how you're going to monetize this. How are you going to make it worth your while so that it's a good thing for your business? So there's a few ways that you can do that. Firstly, you could absolutely use ads, and you could work once you've built up your audience, you can work with brands one-to-one to secure brand deals to promo certain shit. You could use an option like Anchor offers where they already have ads ready to go and they just want ears to shove it into, so they will insert it into your podcast. That's only if you elect for them to do that, and they take a certain cut of them, and you get the rest of the profit from that. You could sell stuff. You could have Patreon. You could be giving people free lead magnets to get them onto your mailing list, so then you can sell to them. You might be trying to position yourself as an expert. You might want to drop in talks about, the subject that you teach on or that you're a coach on or whatever it is that you're selling. Have topics around that so you can prove that you're an expert in it. You can give a lot of value to people, and you can remind them, hey, if you want to dive deeper into this, we can't cover everything in a podcast episode, but I've got this course, or I've got this one-to-one coaching program, or I've got this book out, or whatever the fuck else, guys, or whatever the fuck else. So those are all my superfluous notes on how to record a podcast. I hope this has been useful. If you've got questions that you'd like me to answer, please email support@leoniedawson.com. I am here to help, and I love getting questions. This was actually a question from one of you, so I'm fucking thrilled to answer it for you. If you fucking feel like it, sure, give me 5 stars on whatever podcast thing you listen to. I don't really care, but sure, why not? Who cares? I'm sure I'm supposed to care, but I don't. If you want to buy shit from me, I like that even more. LeonieDawson.com. Oh, hot tip. I wanted to say, public service announcement, world release. The 2021 Goal Getter books are only available until January 15. After then, I'm actually closing sales for them because I fucking feel like it. No, because it's actually quite a bit of manual work for my assistant to manage every day that we have the books up, because we've got to pay for each book set to go through and then manage all of that stuff. So I'm only offering them until January 15th. So if you want them for next year, you need to buy them, and buy them now. Do not forget. I know Christmas is coming. I know we've got a lot on our plate, but do not forget. They're at goalgetterbooks.com. All right. I love you. I hope you have a magnificent day. And most of all, if you are thinking about recording a podcast, which I think you are because you've listened to this whole fucking thing the whole way through, I just want you to press publish. I want you to press publish now. I want you to record that podcast and share it with the world, because we need you and we need your voice. And we're all hungry for it. We're desperate for it. All right. I love you guys.